Hello to all of you dear audience of the Elixir of Awareness channel all over the world. Welcome to episode number 40. The book that we're gonna discuss, its main ideas is The Myth of Individualism by Mr. Peter L. Calero. The book begins with the key question of how social forces shape our lives. Have you ever thought about how society and environment create our identity? We live in a world that's dominated by the myth of individualism, and it seems that the influence of environmental conditions and other forces is ignored, and all the responsibilities are placed on the individual. Our world today is full of different stories about people who could change their destiny and achieve their goals alone and with hard work, and only with the power of will. But is it the same in reality? Don't social forces and environmental conditions have a significant influence on the determination of people's destiny? We will answer these questions in the following, so stay with us.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
The modern world shows people from a close-up view, but if we step back a little and watch society from a further view, we can see the factors that shape our emotional behavior and ultimately our destiny. For example, in which social class we're born or in which culture of society we're born, as well as other determining factors such as the government and the media. But Mr. Peter L. Calero first goes to the influence of cultural symbols of a society to investigate the effect of social forces on people. He talks about a concept called dehumanization. For example, in a period of about 300 years of history, many people were labeled as witches. Many people were excluded from the list of humans and burned alive, thus disappearing from the scene of the times. But the story behind the scenes is very strange. Let's forget for a moment the common image of an old woman as a witch stirring the cauldron, because many of the women who were killed on the accusation of witchcraft were women who fighting for the restoration of freedom. But in that period and in that society, with that culture, those in power dehumanized society with various accusations in order to achieve their own desires and interests. Only between 1450 and 1750, more than 600 people were burned alive while they were tied to poles. And what's very surprising is that the community of Christian priests at that time were watching this scene and didn't react. We see many disasters like this in human history. For example, how a large part of the inhabitants of our planet remained silent in front of slavery. Certainly, there's nothing worse than a human being with equal rights being a slave of another human being who's no different from them. Mr. Peter L. Calero believes that what happened in these tragedies was a kind of dehumanization. But how does this process happen? Through symbols. Our world actually has two parts. One part of the world still exists with or without us, like trees, mountains, rain, storms, and seas, or all the natural forces we know. But there's another part of the world that's real only because of the agreement between us humans. It means that some things exist only because we think they exist. Humans make a symbol through a collective agreement, and that institution appears real and other people also believe in it. For example, money. Money is a symbol that only the collective agreement of humans makes it real. Money is just a piece of paper, but because all humans agree on it, it becomes valuable. Many other symbols, such as governments or types of assets, are all subjective in nature, not objective. But sometimes these mental symbols that we create and believe in become more important than the objective world. We see the real world through the filter of these mental agreements. In fact, we evaluate the world through these imaginary symbols, and these mental symbols form our identity. The truth is fluid. And when it's poured into our mind, it's our mind that gives it shape, and the final shape is derived from our mental symbols.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
In an interesting experiment, Americans and Japanese were shown a picture of a fishbowl. Two divergent cultures that are very different from each other. And then they were asked to write their description. Americans often focus on fish, but why? Because their dominant culture is individualistic, and their view of the world and their collective agreements are all about individual independence and self-reliance? But when the same picture was shown to the Japanese in the East, they paid close attention to all the details, not just the fish. Or for example, if you compare the newspapers of Eastern and Western countries, you'll see significant differences. For example, newspapers in China mostly consider the circumstances that led to the crime, while the same news is published in a different meaning world in the West in a way that focuses more on the person who committed the crime. It means that only the disaster itself is important to them, not the circumstances of the disaster. We want to say that when we're born and live in a different culture, we also see the world completely differently, even if it's about seeing and describing a fishbowl. Ludwig Wittgenstein says, "The limits of my language means the limits of my world." In the following, the author of the book, Mr. Peter L. Callerow, talks about the importance of the group. As a social force, the group shapes our actions, behaviors, and decisions. Listen to this strange short story based on reality. In April 2007, then 18-year-old Louise Ogborn was working at a McDonald's in Mount Washington, K, when her manager asked to speak with her. Ogborn's boss, Donna Summers, was on the phone with a man who claimed he was a police officer named Officer Scott, who'd been tipped off regarding a theft incident. She was being accused of stealing a customer's purse. Nearly 4 hours later, a traumatized Ogborn quit McDonald's after being subjected to emotional and sexual abuse at the behest of the alleged cop on the phone. The individuals who carried out his requests were Summers and her fiancé Walter Nix Jr., who were all led to believe a police officer was asking them to engage in the heinous acts inflicted upon Ogborn. This was just a summary of that story, but what's surprising and turns this story into a sociological case is that this didn't happen in just one branch of McDonald's. Between 1995 and 2015, the number of violent crimes falling within 1 year by 474%. At least 70 similar phone calls were made in more than 130 different states in the United States, which always resulted in such terrible situations. And most of these phone intruders, like the fake Scott officer, were never identified.
Don't forget to like and click the subscribe button for more weekly updates on mental health and self-development. Thank you.
But the story of the fake officer Scott proves that we're usually vulnerable to the orders of higher authorities, and we may even do terrible things under their influence. Hannah Arendt, the great libertarian philosopher, talks about the encounter with Eichmann in the book Eichmann in Jerusalem. Eichmann is one of the most important people in history who marked the terrible events of the Auschwitz camp. When she sees Eichmann, she realizes that he doesn't look like a demon, he doesn't have horns, and he doesn't have a tail like a devil. She realizes that he's like us. And according to Hannah Arendt, what made Eichmann do all these terrible things was the vulgarity of evil. And a vulgar person is someone who can't critically criticize the norms of the surrounding environment. A vulgar person is someone who can't think about orders. And vulgar is someone who can't sometimes stand outside the group and criticize the values of the group fairly. Groups are the source of domination and exploitation, and of course, they are the source of freedom at the same time. If we define them correctly, groups can lead to good things. We constantly need to evaluate the group's values and receive feedback. And we should sometimes see the group from the outside and not remove the opposing voice from the group, because maybe this same opposing voice can prevent a group mistake. And if a group has such conditions, they can access to freedom. But the economic class in which we're born also plays an important role in the formation of our identity. Mr. Peter L. Calero compares two children who live in two different economic classes and examines the daily life of these children individually. For example, how do they play, how they eat, how they have fun, and how they relate to adults. And he examines and compares all these things about both children, one from the lower class and the other from the rich class. And in the end, you witness two completely different worlds and two completely different people, as well as two different destinies. So the class we live in shapes our personality and influences our destiny. Here, all the far-fetched stories about individual success are suddenly discredited. The truth is that the disadvantaged are in a cycle of poverty, and until they get out of the cycle, they won't be able to improve their conditions and progress and reach a suitable position. Of course, there are always exceptions, and certainly individual effort can be very effective, but the impact of the environment and economic and social class are also very effective. This familiar story is the story of many winners who achieved brilliant achievements and think that all these successes and achievements were the result of their own merit and efforts. But when we look at society from a long-shot perspective, and when we analyze success stories with numbers and statistics, not with fake, dreamy stories, then we will see that many members of modern society can't change their circumstances. At the same time, the path to success for many people is like an elevator that has an air conditioner and plays music. While for some others, the path to success is like climbing a broken staircase. The ultimate question of this episode is whether you think environmental conditions influenced your current situation or not. Please tell us, where are you living now? And share your comments with us. And thank you very much for being with us until the end.